Welcome back to another Ecobee how-to video. This video is going to build on the setup of a heat pump with electric auxiliary heat. This one's going to specifically go through the thresholds options, which is kind of like the operating settings and parameters. We're covering two different options for staging. This video is going to cover the manual staging option, which just offers a few more customizable features than the automatic staging. We're going to access that from our main screen by going into our menu, scrolling down to settings, and then we're going to select installation settings, advanced options. Quick recap: if you hit equipment, you'll see all the wiring that it's got picked up, the equipment and its individual settings. This screen is specifically for all of the settings that you went through on the initial power up. So when power got first turned on and you went through all those screens, which we've covered in a different video. But if we back out and we go to our thresholds, you're going to see all of our different operating options. The next option you're going to see is configure staging. Like I said, this video is going to cover manual staging, which again just gives us some more customizable features. The first thing beneath that is auxiliary heat max outdoor. So this is just the temperature outside that it will not use the auxiliary heat. So it's actually defaulted to 35 degrees. So if the thermostat detects that it is warmer than 35 outside, it will not use the auxiliary heat. It will only attempt to use the heat pump. We're gonna bump this up to a higher number, anywhere from 40 to 50 degrees. And the reason is, 40 something degrees outside is still chilly. The thermostat will not use the auxiliary unless it has to. But this way, if there is an issue with the heat pump, it is able to use the auxiliary heat on those chillier days. The next option is going to be compressor minimum cycle off time. That's just the one that prevents short cycling, so you can't turn the unit right back on. You can shorten that if you'd like. It doesn't really make much difference. You'll see the next option is compressor minimum outdoor temperature. We made that adjustment in a previous video during the initial power up setup. We're going to leave that at minus 10 degrees. AC overcool max. So this is an option that's great for units that are multi-staged or modulating. What it does is it allows the thermostat to run the air conditioner past the set point of the thermostat to get the humidity out. It's defaulted to disabled. You can adjust it. That's typically something we'll do on the service side if there's an issue with humidity control in the summer. Not really necessary to change during our install setup, but it's good to be aware of. Heat differential temperature, it's defaulted at 0.5 degrees, but this is the minimum difference from our set point before it turns on the heat. So it's defaulted at half a degree. If the thermostat is set to 71, but it's reading 70.5 internally, of course, because it only displays whole numbers, it will turn on the heat right then. You can adjust this a little bit. 0.5 allows the system to kind of more proactively turn the heat on, so that way it's able to keep it closer to its set point and have a shorter cycle. Heat dissipation time is defaulted to auto. This is just the amount of time that the fan's going to run after the heat's turned off. We can leave that. Auxiliary minimum on time. There's also the cooling differential temperature, which is the same thing as the heat. How quickly does it turn the cooling on? Cool dissipation temperature, compressor minimum on time. These are all features that are adjustable, but we typically during the install will leave in place. and they might just need adjusted during service if there's some operating concerns from the homeowner. If we scroll a little bit further down, we have compressor to auxiliary temperature delta. So that's the temperature from the set point and the actual temperature when it's just going to automatically kick on the auxiliary heat with the primary heat source. Again, from an install standpoint, we can leave that to auto. On some occasions, we might change that to 1 degree or 2 degrees if a homeowner thinks their heat pump's really struggling and they don't like the longer cycles of the heat pump. This will just allow it to more proactively turn on the auxiliary heat when needed. We have compressor to auxiliary runtime. It does a similar thing to the temperature delta, but this goes specifically off of runtime. Again, installation wise, we'll typically leave that on auto, but you can adjust it to 10, 20, or 30 minutes. And in that case, the system doesn't care what the temperatures are inside or outside. If the heat pump's been heating for 20 minutes and hasn't satisfied the thermostat, it'll go ahead and turn on the auxiliary once we've hit that time limit. Auxiliary reverse staging, we're going to also leave defaulted to off. What that does is, as the thermostat is approaching our set temperature, it will turn off the auxiliary heat and finish with just the heat pump. We're going to leave that off because when it's incredibly cold outside and the heat pump is going to struggle to maintain, we want to keep the auxiliary heat running to finish out that cycle so the system can shut off and rest for a moment. And then we've got our temperature and humidity correction for the occasion that it does fall out of calibration, or the unit's sitting right next to the kitchen where they're cooking a bunch of pasta and boiling water, or right next to a lamp that's always on. And then we've got the installer code that if you were to enable, would allow you to lock out the install settings and require a code to make adjustments.